Golden Age Hollywood sold America on the fantasy of the leading man. Chiseled jaw, smoldering eyes, the perfect gentleman who always got the girl. But what if the fantasy was just that? Behind studio gates, some of the most devastatingly handsome stars of the era lived double lives, hiding their truth in plain sight while millions swooned. Today, we're revealing the faces that made hearts race, but carried secrets that could have ended everything. 1. Cary Grant. Cary Grant wasn't just handsome. He was the blueprint. That transatlantic accent, those razor-sharp cheekbones, and a charm so effortless it felt dangerous. Grant dominated the screen in films like Bringing Up Baby and North by Northwest, playing the sophisticated bachelor every woman wanted, and every man wanted to be. But behind the tuxedo was a man wrestling with his identity in an era that demanded silence. Grant's relationship with actor Randolph Scott became Hollywood's worst-kept secret. The two lived together on and off for over a decade, sharing a beach house that the press dubbed Bachelor Hall. Photos of them cooking together, lounging poolside, and living as domestic partners circulated in fan magazines. But the studio system spun it as just two buddies saving money. Grant married 5 times, each union dissolving amid whispers and speculation. He experimented with substances, seeking therapy, and exploring his psyche through controversial means, all while maintaining that impeccable public image. Close friends later revealed Grant spoke openly about his attractions to men, calling himself a homosexual in a heterosexual body in private conversations. When he died in 1986, the debate over his sexuality continued, but one thing remained undisputed. He was one of the most beautiful men ever to grace the silver screen. 2. Tyrone Power. Tyrone Power had the face of a Renaissance painting come to life. Dark eyes, perfect symmetry, and a smile that could melt steel. He was 20th Century Fox's golden boy, starring in swashbucklers like The Mark of Zorro and romantic epics like Blood and Sand. Women lined up around the block just to catch a glimpse, and his box office power was undeniable. But Power lived in constant fear of exposure. His marriages to Annabella and later Linda Christian were heavily publicized, the studio ensuring every photo op screamed heterosexual bliss. Behind closed doors, however, Power carried on affairs with men throughout his career. His relationship with Mexican actor Cesar Romero was the subject of industry gossip, though both men kept it tightly locked down. Colleagues later recalled Power's relationships with several men, including a particularly intense connection during the filming of The Razor's Edge. The pressure of hiding took its toll. Power struggled with depression and turned to alcohol. On set for Solomon and Sheba in 1958, he suffered a massive heart attack during a sword-fighting scene and died at just 44. Many who knew him believed the stress of living a double life contributed to his early death. Decades later, his daughter confirmed what insiders always knew. Her father had loved both men and women, but couldn't say so in a world that wouldn't accept it. 3. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift redefined what it meant to be beautiful on screen. His vulnerability, those haunted eyes, and that delicate intensity made him a sensation in films like A Place in the Sun, From Here to Eternity, and The Heiress. Clift wasn't just handsome. He was achingly, tragically beautiful, and he used that beauty to convey pain and longing like no one before him. Clift never hid his sexuality from friends, carrying on relationships with both men and women throughout his life. His romance with actor Jack Larson lasted years, conducted in the shadows of Hollywood's ruthless gaze. Then came 1956, the car accident that shattered his face and nearly killed him. Elizabeth Taylor, his closest friend, pulled teeth from his throat and saved his life, but Clift was never the same. His reconstructed face lost some of its ethereal quality, and the physical pain drove him to pills and alcohol. He continued working, delivering powerful performances despite his struggles, but the industry whispered that he was damaged goods. Directors like John Huston made cruel jokes about his appearance. Clift died in 1966 from a heart attack, alone in his New York townhouse at 45. Friends later revealed he felt trapped by his beauty, knowing that his looks opened doors, but that his truth could slam them shut. His legacy, as one of cinema's most sensitive, gorgeous talents, remains untouchable. 4. Rock Hudson. Rock Hudson was the definition of the American dreamboat. 6'4", broad shoulders, rugged features softened by warm eyes and that million-dollar smile. He was the romantic lead in dozens of films, now most famously opposite Doris Day in comedies like Pillow Talk and Lover Come Back. Hudson embodied masculinity so perfectly that no one dared question it publicly. But it was all smoke and mirrors. Hudson was gay, something known within Hollywood circles, but fiercely protected by his agent Henry Wilson, who also changed his name from Roy Scherer. The studio arranged a lavish marriage to Wilson's secretary, Phyllis Gates, in 1955, complete with magazine spreads and carefully staged photos. The marriage lasted 3 years before Gates filed for divorce, later claiming she had no idea about Hudson's sexuality, though many doubted that. Throughout his career, Hudson maintained relationships with men, including a long-term partnership with Mark Christian that would later become legally significant. When Hudson was diagnosed with AIDS in 1984, he became the first major celebrity to face the disease publicly. His gaunt appearance shocked the world when he appeared at a press conference with Doris Day. He died in 1985, and his death forced America to confront both the AIDS crisis and the reality that their ultimate leading man had been living a hidden life. Mark Christian later won a lawsuit against Hudson's estate, claiming Hudson had exposed him to the virus without disclosure. 5. Dirk Bogarde. British cinema had its own impossibly handsome secret in Dirk Bogarde. With his aristocratic features, piercing blue eyes, and understated elegance, Bogarde became one of England's most celebrated actors. He starred in everything from war films like The Bridge on the River Kwai to controversial dramas like Victim, which tackled homosexuality head-on in 1961, a genuinely radical move. Victim was Bogarde's quiet rebellion. Playing a married barrister being blackmailed over a gay affair, he brought devastating authenticity to a role most actors wouldn't touch. The film cost him his Hollywood career before it even started. American studios wanted nothing to do with him afterward. But Bogarde didn't care. He moved to France and continued making daring films with directors like Luchino Visconti, including Death in Venice, where his portrayal of an aging composer, obsessed with a beautiful boy, was painfully, beautifully realized. Bogarde lived with his manager and partner, Anthony Forwood, for over 40 years, though he never publicly confirmed the nature of their relationship. In his later years, he published memoirs that danced around his sexuality with careful language, never quite saying it outright. When he died in 1999, he left instructions that his private papers be destroyed, taking his full truth with him. Still, those who knew him understood. Bogarde was unapologetically himself in private, even if the public never got full confirmation. 6. Farley Granger. Farley Granger had the kind of looks that stopped traffic. Delicate features, expressive eyes, and a boyish quality that made him perfect for the troubled young men he often played. Alfred Hitchcock cast him in Rope and Strangers on a Train, both films dripping with homoerotic subtext that Hitchcock deliberately wove in, knowing exactly what he was doing. Granger lived openly among friends, conducting relationships with both men and women throughout his life. His affair with composer and lyricist Arthur Lawrence lasted years, though both men saw other people. Granger later had a long-term relationship with screenwriter Robert Calhoun that spanned decades. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Granger eventually spoke openly about his sexuality in his 2007 memoir, Include Me Out, detailing his affairs with Ava Gardner, Shelley Winters, and Leonard Bernstein with equal candor. He described the suffocating nature of Hollywood's closet and his relief at finally living truthfully. Granger never achieved the superstardom his looks and talent suggested he deserved, partly because he refused to play the studio game completely. He worked steadily in theater and television, carving out a respectable career on his own terms. When he died in 2011 at 85, where he was remembered as one of the few who eventually told his story honestly, refusing to let Hollywood's homophobia erase his relationships or his truth. 7. Tab Hunter. Tab Hunter was so handsome it almost seemed unfair. That all-American blonde perfection, the jawline, the athletic build, and those blue eyes made him a teen idol in the 1950s. He starred in wholesome films like Damn Yankees and beach movies that showcased his looks while carefully hiding everything else. Warner Brothers built an entire image around Hunter as the boy next door every girl should want to marry. The truth was wildly different. Hunter was gay and had already survived a scandal before his career even took off. In 1950, he was arrested at a party raided by police for being a gay gathering. The studio buried the story, she paying off cops and journalists to keep Hunter's name out of the press. They arranged dates with starlets like Natalie Wood and Debbie Reynolds, relationships that were pure publicity. Hunter later revealed he'd had a serious relationship with figure skater Ronnie Robertson and affairs with actor Anthony Perkins, though both men stayed closeted. The charade took its toll. Hunter struggled with the disconnect between his public persona and private reality. After Hollywood moved on from him, Hunter found freedom. He came out publicly in 2005 with his memoir, Tab Hunter Confidential, which was later adapted into a documentary. He spent his final years living openly with his partner, Alan Glazer, finally free from the machinery that had controlled him. Hunter died in 2018 at 86, having lived long enough to see the world change and to tell his story his way. 8. Anthony Perkins. Anthony Perkins had an unusual kind of handsomeness, angular, intense, with dark eyes that suggested depth and danger. He became immortal as Norman Bates in Psycho. But before that, he was a rising star with serious acting chops, earning an Oscar nomination for Friendly Persuasion at just 24. Perkins brought a nervous energy to his roles that captivated audiences. Perkins was gay, something he struggled with his entire life. He had relationships with actors Tab Hunter and Grover Dale, but the pressure to conform led him to conversion therapy, a damaging practice that only deepened his internal conflict. In 1973, he married photographer Barry Berenson in what many believed was an attempt to cure himself, or at least appear cured, though they had 2 sons. And by all accounts, Perkins cared deeply for his family. But the marriage didn't change his orientation. He continued having affairs with men throughout their marriage, living in constant fear of exposure. When Perkins contracted HIV in the early 1980s, he kept it secret even from his wife until shortly before his death. He died of AIDS-related complications in 1992, just days after his wife learned of his diagnosis. Barry Berenson herself died tragically on September 11, 2001, aboard one of the planes that hit the World Trade Center. Perkins' story is one of Hollywood's most heartbreaking. A beautiful, talented man, tortured by an era that wouldn't let him be himself, leaving behind a legacy of brilliant performances and profound personal pain. 9. James Dean. James Dean packed more beauty, talent, and mythology into 24 years than most people could in a lifetime. His smoldering looks, rebellious energy, and raw vulnerability made him the voice of a generation in just 3 films: East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, and Giant. Dean wasn't conventionally handsome. He was something more dangerous, more real, and infinitely more magnetic. Dean's sexuality has been debated for decades, but those who knew him paint a clear picture. He had relationships with both men and women, including confirmed affairs with advertising executive Rogers Brackett, who helped launch his career, and television director James Sheldon. Dean was open with friends about his attractions, telling one interviewer he didn't see why he should limit himself. His relationship with Angeli, an actress he genuinely loved, ended partly due to studio interference and her religious family's disapproval. After that, Dean became more reckless, channeling his pain into his performances. When he died in a car crash in 1955, just weeks after finishing Giant, the world lost a star on the verge of exploding into something unprecedented. Decades later, friends and biographers revealed more about Dean's fluid sexuality, but his estate and some defenders fiercely contested these claims. What's undeniable is that Dean represented a new kind of beauty, vulnerable, complex, and unapologetically real, even if the full truth about his life remained hidden behind Hollywood's carefully constructed myths. 10. Sal Mineo. Sal Mineo's beauty was delicate and intense, with dark eyes that conveyed pain and passion in equal measure. He shot to fame playing Plato in Rebel Without a Cause alongside James Dean, delivering a performance that earned him an Oscar nomination at just 16. Mineo continued working throughout the 1960s, but as he aged out of teenage roles, Hollywood's interest waned. Mineo was one of the first actors to openly acknowledge his sexuality, at least among friends and in certain circles. By the late 1960s, he stopped hiding, attending gay clubs and living more openly, even as it cost him roles. He directed a controversial stage production of Fortune and Men's Eyes, a play about sexual violence in prison that featured explicit content and full frontal male nudity, shocking audiences and critics. The play cemented his reputation as fearless, but also marked him as unemployable in mainstream Hollywood. Mineo's personal life included relationships with several men, though he kept specifics private out of necessity. On February 12, 1976, Mineo was stabbed to death in a West Hollywood alley behind his apartment, a brutal murder that initially sparked speculation. It was a hate crime. The killer, later caught, turned out to be a robber with no connection to Mineo's sexuality, but the tragedy underscored the dangers gay men faced. Mineo died at 37, a beautiful talent stolen too soon, remembered as someone who started pushing boundaries before most others dared to. So there you have it, 10 devastatingly handsome men who carried Hollywood's biggest secret. Which one shocked you most? Did we miss someone you think deserved a spot? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's get this conversation going. And here's the real question. If these men were starting their careers today, would they still feel the need to hide? Or have we actually come as far as we think we have?